Welcome back to Close Up. We are moving right along with our continuing series of interviews with Republican candidates in New Hampshire's 1st Congressional District. This morning we get to talk to Gail Huff Brown, one of the contenders looking to take on Congressman Chris Pappas in November. Gail, thanks for connecting with us.
Of course, thank you.
So in this primary, there are a lot of candidates and it's shaping up to be very competitive. Some of them are arguing it's time for a youth movement in Congress, that voters need to send someone in their 20s to Washington. Does life experience still matter in our modern politics, and specifically in this race?
I think life experiences matter a lot. I really do. I think youth in our party and in our system is so important. The energy, the vitality, it's all so very important. And we have wonderful people who are running, who bring great energy to the party. But when you're making decisions that impact people, many of them, in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s and older, you have to have some experience with what that means. What does it mean to buy a house? What does it mean to put your child through high school and college? What does it mean to care for your aging parents and then burying them? What does it mean to go through life processes like my 30 years as a journalist on television? I mean, I had to talk to people, interview people, get to the bottom of things, find out the truth. That takes experience. I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a military spouse. I know what it's like to have children and raise them. I know what it's like to say goodbye to fellow military friends and have them never come back. Those are experiences that you just, unfortunately, it comes with aging. And the past 4 years spending overseas, that gave me a perspective that I never could have gotten anywhere else. And it's a valuable experience because you learn that being an American means so much more than just thinking about America. We are the shining light in the world. We have a responsibility as Americans to look out far beyond our borders and to care about people all over the world. And we are a giving and philanthropic people, and we have to keep that in mind. But all of those things, all of those, the compassion and the experience do play into that. And yes, energy and new ideas, so important, so important. But when you're making decisions that impact millions of people, and that's what Congress does. I mean, those decisions impact millions of people, and they are about weighty subjects like housing and money and taxes. I think life experience is very important.
You mentioned your family service there in New Zealand. I'm interested for your perspective on the COVID-19 pandemic, having that unique aspect of being there instead of in America when everything hit. Was there anything or you think New Zealand did better than the United States when it comes to COVID-19?
No, absolutely not. Okay, so you're at the bottom of the earth. The closest continent to New Zealand is Antarctica. You have 2 international airports, Christchurch, Auckland. You close them down for 2 weeks. Nobody goes out, nobody comes in. You have no COVID. We can't do that in America. We can't close every international airport. That's absurd. So we could stop, or I should say they could stop COVID back when they closed the airports and everyone had to stay inside in a lockdown for 6 weeks. What happens when you open up those airports? I'll tell you what happens. COVID comes in. That's exactly what happened. So there are months and months and months of having no COVID. That ended very quickly when they opened those airports. And now they're stuck with, okay, how do we handle this? I think respectfully that they could have done a better job.
Last time we talked, we were discussing the abortion issue, and you described yourself as a mix of pro-life and pro-choice, like a lot of Americans. And you said, quote, "I don't know," when we asked you if you'd be upset if Roe versus Wade gets overturned. Certainly now, as things have developed on the Supreme Court, it looks like that could be a likelihood that sometime later this year Roe v. Wade is overturned. Are you still conflicted about what that might mean for American women?
I'm emotionally conflicted about the issue of abortion, period. I think every woman is. I am not conflicted about the law. So I want to make that really, really clear if I can. The conflict and the emotion is what I was talking about there. I'm not conflicted about the law, though. I think every state should have the right to make their own laws. For that reason, I feel that Roe versus Wade should be overturned because I think every state should have the right to make their own laws. We made our own law here in New Hampshire. I support that law. I think it's a good law. And yeah, I think it should be overturned. Let's give it back to the states. Just like we know what's best for voting, we know what's best for legalizing or not marijuana, we know what's best for gun rights. We have a constitutional carry, very important in New Hampshire. We stand by our state's rights. And that's where I stand on Roe versus Wade.
You mentioned voting. Do you think there's anything that needs to change with our election laws?
I think that we have to be completely transparent, obviously. There were irregularities in the last election. Listen, I said it before. COVID won the election. If not for COVID, Trump would still be our president. But because of COVID, we had all these changes in the laws due to emergency orders and emergency, lockdowns. And so states just went crazy changing the laws last minute. It caused a lot of confusion, So we have to make sure that people show an ID, that we can verify who showed up to vote, did vote. And we have to make sure that it's transparent so that people trust the election system.
Do you believe President Trump, though, that the 2020 election was stolen, that somehow the Democrats perpetrated a massive, covert, multi-state operation to steal the election from him?
I think that there were irregularities, that COVID was exactly what got in the way. And COVID won the election. So then I'd have to believe that the Democrats set off COVID. I'm not going there. The point is that no, I think it's a case where we had a lot of problems in the elections. And, the courts have looked at this. It's gone all the way up through the court system. We are a nation of laws. We have to believe in our court system. I believe in the nation of laws and the court system, and I go by what the court has decided.
One of the most difficult issues facing Washington right now is that of immigration. If you're going to fix the system, you have to do something about the millions of undocumented people that are living in this country. Would you vote for an immigration reform package that includes a pathway to citizenship for those folks?
I would have to, the simple answer is no, of course not. But whenever you're answering a hypothetical question like this, obviously there are all sorts of extenuating circumstances. So since I'm not looking at the bill that you're hypothetically suggesting, I can't speak specifically to that. But what I do think is that we have to strengthen our border. We have to finish the wall. And again, we are a nation of laws. We cannot allow illegals to come into our country. We can't allow it, and it has to stop. In fact, that's one of the reasons that this is my campaign. Say no to Joe. Say no. Say no to these borders that are left open. Say no to taxes going up. Say no to CRT in our schools. Say no to defunding police. Say no to leaving our Americans behind in Afghanistan. That's why I got into this race. Is because I was so angry about our Americans being left in Afghanistan. And I know, as an American serving overseas, if my commander-in-chief had left me behind, it wouldn't have happened under President Trump. It wouldn't have happened. So say no to Joe.
Let's move to the Second Amendment and gun rights. Would you support legislation to reinstate a federal assault weapons ban if you're elected?
No.
What about gun ownership? Are you a gun owner?
I am.
And give us a sense. Is it a personal protection? Why do you own a gun?
Yeah. It's a Ruger. It's a Ruger pistol, and it's for personal protection. And my husband owns a gun, and we do target practice. We do shooting. Of course, he was in the military for 39 years, so he's an expert marksman. I'm not. But yes, we believe strongly that we have the right to protect ourselves and to protect our family.
Speaking of families, and you touched on this before, the issue of affordable housing, buy a new home, that American dream out of reach for them almost at this point. So if you're elected to Congress, what, if anything, do you think the Congress should be doing about affordable housing?
This is a huge problem. I'm also a realtor. I don't know if you know that, but I'm a realtor. So I face this issue every single day when I'm dealing with the housing crisis, especially here in New Hampshire, where it's so difficult to actually get affordable housing built because of all the rules and the regulations and the, just all the red tape that's involved. If we took away some of those regulations and we took away some of the rules that have been put into place, I think we'd have a lot more building going on to provide for people who don't have housing. We also have to look at, are we providing the right kind of financial incentives so that young people in particular have the opportunity to buy their first home? Look what we did after the war. Look what we did. So many American families owned homes at that time, and this is back, obviously in my childhood, because they had the opportunity from the federal government. So there has to be incentives. There have to be some kind of programs to allow for our young people to buy their first home, because that's how you build assets. That is the American dream, and we have to keep the American dream alive.
All right, Gail Huff Brown, thank you so much for joining us on Close Up.